and welcome back to iProperty Radio with Brian Fox and myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on social media at iProperty Radio or email hello@ipropertyradio.com. This week on Breaking Ground, I'm delighted to welcome Harrison Gardner, builder, teacher and co-founder of Common Knowledge, the non-profit social enterprise focused on sharing skills for a sustainable life. Harrison, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Carol. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm absolutely delighted. Tell us about Common Knowledge. Now, some people will be familiar because there's been quite a bit of momentum gathering around the work that you and your team there are doing. But for anybody who isn't familiar, talk to us about Common Knowledge and the mission.
Sure. Yeah. I guess our mission out at Common Knowledge is to teach people the skills, techniques, and the process to creating the life that they need, the life that they want to live, a more sustainable life, and essentially a happier life. We really believe that taking control of your own life, taking part in the day-to-day problems that we're having to solve, learning how to solve some of our own issues is part of leading a happy, fulfilled life. And we're teaching those practical skills, those like how to build, how to mend, how to fix, how to create. We're teaching all those practical skills out here to try and give people that knowledge.
Harrison, where did this stem from? Because I understand what you're saying, but are you looking at a generation or possibly even two generations that have gotten a little bit helpless or feeling a little out of control with the basic necessities of life?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. You know, two generations ago, we knew how to solve our own problems. We knew how to fix a wall if it started to crack, how to put a shelf up in our house, how to repair things around us that are breaking, as things do as we use them. And especially we knew how to grow our homes with us as we changed. You know, we started to treat homes like they're products, like they're these stagnant things that aren't shifting and evolving. But that's not true. You know, our homes move with us. And because we're not stagnant, the home can't be stagnant. As we have new ideas, as kids come along, as we want to start a new hobby, the home needs to change and grow to receive that. And what we're seeing now is really all of my peers, a generation of people really lost at how to do anything in the home, only looking to subcontractors or finding someone else to solve these problems for them. And it's a bit of a result of us all becoming specialists in one thing and losing a lot of grasp of all the other parts of our life that are so important and so integral to what we're doing. And while there's nothing wrong with being a specialist, when it comes to things like food and shelter, our basic human needs, I don't think this is something we should be subcontracting. I think this is something we need to have some say in and some control in and a very strong opinion in.
Okay. I think that was one of your messages that really resonated quite strongly with me, that we really have allowed ourselves to become very disempowered with the things that are vital to our survival, like food and shelter, the most basic. We've become very disempowered, and we can see that through people, particularly in the last weekend, taking to the streets, the cost of living. Things are getting and feeling maybe very out of control for people. And I think it's interesting when you talk about how our homes were always meant to evolve. I mean, you talk about it as a product. We probably talk about it too much as an investment. But I picked up a copy of your book, which is excellent, by the way, Build Your Own, and recommend it to anybody, not just if they're thinking of building their own, but actually to understand, to be honest, if you are living in a home and you need to maintain it, then I recommend it. So it's not just for people who are considering building their own. But one of the very important things you say in the very early stages of that book is that, years ago, people would have provided for the home they needed now and then trusted that they would be able to help it evolve as their family evolved. Can you just explain that, how that works?
Of course, yeah. And I think it's very practically, it's the way that it can work for us. A young person, a young adult looking to leave home does not need a 4-bedroom home, right? Does not need the home that they're going to need in 20 years time when they've got a family and 3 children. They need something to serve their needs now. So we used to see a lot of shared accommodation, a lot of rented rooms and that kind of thing, and that was the stopgap. And then a young family starting off, before say a couple getting married, wanting to move into their own space, needing their own space, trying to create their life, they also don't need a 4-bedroom home yet. They don't need, and they can't afford it realistically. You know, these people in their late 20s and early 30s, very few of them can afford the mortgage that they would need to create or buy a 3 or 4-bedroom home. And so what we do by building a home or choosing a home that meets our needs now is we allow ourselves to grow, and we allow our home to become the shape of us and our lives, rather than forcing our lives to fit in the shape of the home that we decided on 10 years ago, which I don't know about you, but I have a lot of different ideas now than I did 10 years ago. And if I was trying to squeeze my life into the shape that I had created for it 10 years ago, it wouldn't work. It would be hard, it would be frustrating, and it wouldn't be fulfilling. And the skills that you need to be able to change your home regularly, once a year, once every 2 years or 3 years, as your ideas change or as things in your life change, those skills are so basic. There's nothing complicated. This is stuff that everyone used to be able to do, right? It's very easy to look at building and think that it's highly specialized and we should only let someone else do it. But these are things that every single member of society took part in before. And it's just these last few generations, as we've all become better at what we do, more specialized in what we do, and also the influence of social media and Instagram only showing us the picture perfect version of everything that we create. It can be very disempowering when you go to make something for the first time to see that you haven't made it perfect, that your joint isn't perfect. And I think what I want is to bring back a bit of agency around this idea that these are our things to make. We're allowed to make mistakes. We're meant to make mistakes. This is how we learn. And there's no learning without getting it wrong several times before you get it right. And that's why we start by making furniture, by making picture frames, by making things around the house, so that when it comes to needing to build that extension onto our house, those YouTube videos might actually make sense to us, or that advice that you ask someone for might actually make a bit more sense because you've got a bit of practice and a bit of use with the tools and the materials.
Is part of this a confidence thing, or well, I mean, on one side of it, I can see that maybe our expectations have just become so high, you know, and maybe it is, as you mentioned there, you know, it's on this Instagram generation kind of looking at things and seeing the final product, but our expectations, our demands have really increased to the point where we can't satisfy them ourselves, and that's why we consume so much. So actually, along with upskilling ourselves, do we need to maybe reevaluate all of the things that we think we need to maybe focus on the basics?
We absolutely do, but I think we also need to reevaluate what the value of these things are, because it's not always the end product that brings us all the joy. It's not always using the product that brings us the joy, but it's the making of the product. It's the part you took in it. We could order takeaway every now and then. I mean, every night, sorry. But when you cook for yourself and you take part in that meal and you know every step that went into creating that meal that you're creating for yourself, it means more, and it has more significance to you, and there is a certain sense of achievement in creating a delicious meal, and the better it tastes, the more achievement that you feel. And the same goes when we're building things, that it's tricky, but as you start to do it, as you start to take on these little challenges, as you come across these problems and then solve them, you start to feel these little bursts of, great, I did that, I fixed that, I repaired that thing, I installed that shelf, I fixed that door that's been creaking for 4 years in my rented apartment. And that moment brings us a lot of satisfaction that no amount of paying a subcontractor or buying something from IKEA or buying something from anywhere is going to give us. And that's what we're losing. What we've lost from 2 generations ago is not the thing. We still have the houses, we still have the tables, we still have the shelves. They're still ending up in our lives, but we're not feeling the connection to them that we did when we took part in creating those things. And that part, that's the living part. That's the being part of the process. That's really important.
And one of the things I suppose we haven't touched on so far is the importance of community in all of this. So you're running, and we'll go through some of them now, but at Common Knowledge, you have a huge range of courses there. Every time I go onto the website, I'm discovering something new, and I'm interested in everything, and I want to try everything. But over the last month or two, I have engaged in not one, but two of your courses because I love them so much. And I came across them on Twitter, just something that sparked my interest. And really, what we're seeing is that when I went to the course, not knowing at all what to expect, the sense of community was something really strong. But there was a sense of shared frustrations, maybe with how we have allowed our lives to become. Again,
Yeah.
on and maybe in a way that doesn't value community. So you might just talk us through the build courses first of all, because that the build course that garnered a lot of attention. I know RTE were down on site,
Yeah.
and it's really sparked a lot of interest. You were doing build courses to deliver a tiny home. So you might just talk us through what that process is.
Of course, yeah. I mean, just to speak to the community part, it was not something that I was expecting or aiming to do. It wasn't something I was trying to create. It's something that inevitably happened because what we're doing is pulling together a lot of people who are feeling frustrated with what the current situation is and are looking for alternatives. And I'm not saying that building your own house is the one-stop solution for everyone in getting into a home, but getting into this conversation again, taking part of this conversation, joining 30 other people in learning, in deep diving into what houses are and how they work and what they mean is a really good way to spend a week. It's a really smart way to spend some time and some money investing in this thing that we spend so much time in and is such an important thing in our life, being our shelter. And the community aspect of it really comes from having 30 people sitting in a room who, rather than just talking about the problems, are looking for solutions and are actively looking for solutions together. And they're encouraging each other to take some chances, to try things, even if they're going to get it wrong, even if they're going to make a mistake. And I think that's so important. And I think that's where this strong community of, we've got over 300 alumni now who have come through the courses, and this community is feeling stronger than ever. It's full of people supporting each other, helping each other, giving advice to each other, sometimes traveling across the country to help each other build. And that's a pretty magical thing that we didn't create, that everyone who came here created just by meeting each other. And that's beautiful.
Well, when
But
it comes to community, facilitation is a huge thing as well. Sometimes having a place to share that like-mindedness.
sure, absolutely. And that's here, we're doing that, we're creating that. The whole point of Common Knowledge is to remind us all that we're all here to learn, no matter what stage of life we're at, whether we're 18 or 80, it doesn't matter. We've got more to learn still, and we learn from each other. And going for all the instructors as well, we're learning so much continually, and in our own building practices, we're always pushing the limits of what we know we can do with what we wish we could do. And we're always trying to be better. And so I really believe that we're all on this journey together. We're all figuring it out together. But what we're trying to do now with the courses is we're teaching people how to build houses. We've been doing it for a while. It's feeling great. It's working great. But people want more. They want to see more parts of it. And some people want a bit less, because building your own house and building your extension is a little intimidating if you haven't learned to use the skills. So we're running a huge amount of weekend workshops this year. We're doing concrete casting for beginners, teaching people how to pour their own concrete countertops or make their own pieces around the house. We're doing a bricklaying course, teaching people how to work with bricks or blocks or any kind of masonry work. We're doing a biomaterial design week, which is really exciting and moving us into this sustainable, regenerative material world of, can we actually grow our own building materials? Can we create the things that we need in our house and fill our home with, our own textiles and all of that kind of stuff? We're doing introductions to furniture design, colors from nature, mending series, make your own ceramic tiles, where we're digging clay from the ground and turning them into tiles to put in the house. And look, it feels great. It feels like we're starting to actually reach out into all the specialized little areas that you need, while the core of it still sits in finding the confidence to believe that we can try these things and that we may eventually be able to learn how to be really good at it, and or good enough to meet the needs that we've got. And I think that's really important, and it's working. You know, the people who are coming here are leaving feeling empowered. They're feeling like they can try these things, and they're going off and they're using the tools and they're making stuff.
You know, it's really interesting when you run, and I know what myself from running workshops of different types, you never know what people are going to take away from it. So, for example, one of the things that I really took away from Build School 1 was I adored learning how to create an arch, build an arch with bricks, understanding spreading the load and the importance of a keystone. And frankly, that's something that has always fascinated me. And I just didn't think that I would ever be able to understand the mechanics of it, and to be able to actually create that, and to see it standing was really special, was really strong. But what really struck me was when I went on to build course 2, and without focusing too much on the build, there was people there who had been on a workshop at the weekend, learning about growing your own and composting, and they had actually created beds and had planted, and they were set on fire, like they were so lit up by this. And it made me think, you know, I had only been thinking about the building, but then actually when I saw the about making every part of your home and the land around it sustainable and useful, and then to see the pleasure people got from that, and they were so proud of it. You know, they walked us
Yeah,
around to show us and introduce us to each to each little
of
thing that we
course.
planted. And you know, it really gave me another side of it. And then I was flicking through your website workshops. Now I didn't understand biomaterial design. Can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the concept of the biomaterial design workshop is seeing how we can create these things that we've been mining or pulling from nature, or relying on other people to give us all the time, whether that's growing our own clothing out of mycelium, or whether it's taking wood shavings and infecting them with algae and creating fabrics and textiles and furniture coverings or lampshades or anything like that. And so it's really an introduction into the things that we can create by being clever with the materials that we have access to, usually waste materials.
Very good. And I'm just doing, I understand now we have to wrap up in the next minute or two,
Sure.
but I'm conscious of the courses that, you know, certainly when I came back from mine, I was telling everybody I know who I thought would enjoy or benefit from these skills. And I was
Yeah,
even telling people who didn't want to hear about them, but
of
that's
course.
that's because I was so excited. You know, when you feel empowered in one way, you definitely want to share that feeling. And
Yeah,
um, again, the basics of food and shelter. I think that from a housing market, you know, just this weekend we started to see the first reports. You know, we can see that a house price correction has started to happen across North America, across parts of Australia, and across parts of the Eurozone. And this was the first week in Ireland where we saw reports of home buyers who would sale agreed properties actually put the skids on those and say, hold on, we actually think there's a price correction coming. So now we're not sure we want to buy because it's looking very likely this would be the peak of the market.
mm,
And there, so it feels to me an opportune time for people, if they're going to be pulling back and
yeah,
pausing for maybe 12 or 24 months to consider their options. It's a really good time to upskill and empower themselves, because one of the things that we've seen is that a lot of the help for home buyers that's coming down the tracks
yeah,
is either for first-time buyers, so excluding people
yeah,
who you know, are not first-time buyers, but also they're grants towards new builds. So
yeah,
actually, they're not targeting the vacant and derelict properties that we have all over this country. And
yeah,
that's where I see huge opportunity. So actually, some of the weekend, I know the week courses might be too much for people to commit to
yeah,
this summer, but throughout the summer, you're running the bricklaying for beginners,
yeah,
which
yeah,
again, very empowering. And the concrete casting sounds fascinating there, because there's so much that you can create there.
yeah.
Are you bringing in tutors to work with you on this?
Absolutely, yeah. So more and more we're growing the team, and we're finding people who are incredible craftspeople at what they do and are really good at passing it on. And so we're very much facilitating a space here of bringing the right instructors and the right people together. But you know, Carol, you're just making me think there are just like the people who are stepping away from these sale agreed properties that they'd committed to. You know, what we're doing here is starting a conversation, and it's not all about every single person who comes to this course doesn't go away and build their own house. That's not the goal. The goal is to take part in the conversation, to bring this conversation away from architects' offices, engineers' offices, and back to the breakfast table, back to arguments at the pub, back to walks along the beach, where it needs to be, where something that is a human need for everyone, right? Where shelter is something that we all have a right to and we all have a say in. We all need to be talking about it, and coming to do a deep dive into buildings and what makes them work and what materials we're using to build them is a great way to be able to have some say in that conversation.
And Harrison, just before we finish up, I know you have some exciting news there. I mentioned that RTE had been down on site and they featured the tiny home build, but I know that there's a big announcement coming. So do you want to share that before we finish up?
That our first tiny home is almost finished. It's days away from being finished, and we'll be able to release it to market. That we'll have 3 of these tiny homes to sell over the next few months, which is really exciting for us. It's really exciting to see this thing that we created, this option for everyone out there to get field tested and to go out and give some people something to focus on and somewhere to live.
Amazing. And for anyone who can't get enough of all of this learning, Harrison and the team have actually been involved in a 5-part TV series with RTE, which is due to broadcast this autumn, called Build Your Own. And Harrison, I look forward to seeing that. Keep up the great work that you and the instructors there are doing. You've a great team around you. So I know that this is going to go so far beyond building into food and materials and everything else. I'm really excited to see how it goes. I recommend for anyone to take a look at the courses, particularly the weekend courses. And actually, I've just spotted 1 or 2 new ones there. So I might be popping down to Clare again this summer. So thank you so much. That was Harrison Gardner, builder, teacher, and co-founder of Common Knowledge. We need to take a quick break now. Stay tuned.